Chiara, adesso mi senti?
Sì, ti sento.
Chiara?
Joanna,
Chiara?
ti sento. Non ti preoccupare. Joanna, ci sono, ok? Ciao Maria.
La parola è entrata.
Joanna, non so se...
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our 7th edition of the webinars organized by the Economy of Francesco, entitled Moving Towards a Better Post-COVID World. Before starting, I remind this meeting, which you can follow in the links shown below the YouTube bar. You can send us our questions on YouTube, and we'll try and read them all, also compatible with the time available. I'm Daniele Pisciutta, a young person from the Agriculture and Justage Village of Economy of Francesco. I organize the webinar activities, and I'm a chemical engineer working for sustainable development. In the past, I've worked in the development of a startup for the improvement of wine production waste. And currently, I work in commercial organization for a multinational company. In the last webinar, we have met Professor Capra and he spoke to us about the climate emergency and also the current pandemic. And as problems cannot be solved alone, but with systemic solutions. Social issues.
We welcome Carlo Petrini. Thank you. Before starting with the presentation, I leave very quickly the word to Luigino Bruni, the scientific director of Economy of Francesco. Ciao Luigino, good morning. Said like this, it's a bit impressive, makes a bit of an effect. I'm very, very happy to welcome Carlo Petrini. With whom I share a relationship of friendship on a lot of fronts. I'm here to welcome him in our home. Like Carlo knows very well, Economy of Francesco. Carlo, together with me, there are a few youth that will give some contribution and ask some question. Economy of Francesco had to be happening in March, between the 26th and the 27th of March. And then the complaints emerged that in the Giotto scenes in the Sixtine Chapel, there was a scene missing. There is not the 29th scene. We had a huge problem with COVID. We didn't expect it. We had to share everything. We had to share also, learn to cope with feelings of fear of death, fear of not touching each other again, hug each other again. Today, the Hobbes saying Homo homini lupus has become Homo homini virus. And so we already started towards November. The Pope Francis put another date in November, and we started working the way we could. So mostly online. Economy of Francesco then already started. You always said that we needed to build a different economy already before the pandemic. About topics of environment, agriculture, food sovereignty, food democracy, and all these things you said in these years. Here I'm going to stop. I don't want to take more seconds from you. So I will give people an appointment on the next seminars, and then in November. We don't know yet exactly how and how many. It will depend on this virus, but we will a wounded body, but a alive body, with social distancing, with masks and individual protections. But we will do it to say that even a wounded body remains a body. We are looking forward to meet you online or physically. And today we are here live streaming in a very beautiful moment. And we're happy to have you here because you said a lot. You did a lot with Terra Madre, with Slow Food, with your relationship and your writings with Pope Francis. So I'm happy to be listening to you. Thank you, Luigino. Before introducing Carlo Petrini and then let him dealing with a question, I wanted quickly to give the words to another of our young people, Nico Lauritsen, part of the... Go, Nico. Hi, everyone. I'm Nico Lauritsen. I am a PhD student at the University of Bologna. I deal with alternative finance, and someone maybe is asking what I'm doing here, dealing with finance in this village. But I'm also engaging in the development of a startup that is trying to recycle food waste, change, and fight hunger. And I believe that there is a common connection between economy, finance, technology, and food. And these are all social constructs based on what is a social relationship that is very important, which is trust. And with this topic, we can go ahead for ages. But today, it's my task to use moderation and give the right timings. And this said, I believe we are here to create an action supporting a movement of change. Now I give back the word to Daniele. Thank you, Nico. Thank you, Luigino. Finally, we start introducing Carlo, and to the first question. We can say Carlo Petrini is a gastronomist, a sociologist, a constructor, and an Italian activist that founded from the birth of, when I was born, 1989, the Slow Food Association, NGO, after a long fight in defense of social rights and civil rights. In 2004, he founded the University of Gastronomic Sciences, and one of the first projects, Terra Madre, states production is a gastronomic act. Food is an element of connection between production and consumption. During this webinar, we will have the chance to go deeper into this topic. The first question, though, starting with this topic. In one of your most recent interviews, you talked about bread sovereignty. You brought this example of the Albero degli Zoccoli of Ermanno Olmi. This is a movie. There is a portrayal of a rural society that starts in a very miserable condition, but then always had a place at their table. There is this concept of love that the Greeks called agape and gave the feeling of solidarity. And this was another time, it was the past, but maybe we can start from there to ask ourselves, how is our relationship with the food? And can we still talk about community, about sharing? If this is not possible, what do you suggest as young people to bring back this solidarity, even if very often we live in abundance and we give food for granted, we take food for granted? Thank you, Carlo. We'll give you the word. Thank you. In the last 50 years, in an exponential manner, food lost value. And it became something more and more a good. So the connection on a primary level was on price. How much does it cost? Not what it is, its value. This is the distinctive element that characterized society in which we have been living, in which we live today, up to the point that running after prices that have to be lower and lower brought the entire system, the entire food system, to confront and to face these massive productions of very low quality, and to put farmers in the situation of being the only workers that practically are not the ones deciding the price of this food, the prices of their work that is decided by other people. And in all of these, we witnessed not only, we listened to the loss of biodiversity, we witnessed because if the aim is to work for the lowest possible price, then you will look for products that are homogeneous, massified. You look for the quantity over quality. We reached a very unsustainable point. This is absolutely unimaginable. We cannot think that this food system can keep on going, making so much damage to biodiversity, but also social damages. And everything is spiced up by a sort of big circus, big show that puts food within this spectacularization. There is no TV in the world, really in the world, that if you turn on the TV, even at 3 a.m. in the morning or 1 a.m. in the morning, there's always someone that talks about food and cooks and presents these foods. So we are really witnessing this food pornography in a way. Why this? This is not food reality. This is a construction that has been made with the purpose of creating a situation of interest to sell more, basically. To sell more, we need to undo this system, because this is an unfair system. This is a system that brings us a society, a reality for which we produce food for 12 billion people. And on the earth, we are only 7,700,000,000,000 people. So there is an unimaginable waste of food, 38% every year. And if we want to quantify this, is a mass body of water that is truly impressive. This means also a huge production of CO2 for 4 billion tons every year. This means land use, fertile land use, that serve the food production, but to produce food that then ends in waste. So it's wasted, thrown away. So with almost 1 billion people starving, or this shows us that this system is corrupted and needs to be changed. Thank you, Carlo. Then now I leave the scene to Nico. We talk again at the end to conclude. Thank you again. First, a technical memorandum. To this webinar is broadcasted and translated in 3 languages: Spanish, English, Spanish, Portuguese, and English, for all the participants of the Economy of Francesco that are listening to us, and to be able to understand each other. The first step is a surprise that we want to make to you, to give a common thread to this webinar.
Carlo, and greetings from my home in Berkeley, California. Here's my question. For many years, you have advocated a shift from our chemical, large-scale industrial agriculture to organic, community-oriented, regenerative farming. In my view, this would represent an ideal systemic solution, one that solves several problems at the same time. If we made such a massive shift, it would greatly reduce our energy dependence, would dramatically increase public health, and would draw down massive amounts of CO2 from the atmosphere and thus slow down the climate emergency. What can we do to catalyze global leadership, especially after our experience with the COVID pandemic, to make such a move? Thank you.
Okay, we're here. Was a very nice surprise. Very nice. Well, I'm happy you managed to make it. The question that Fritjof is asking, is very, very up to date. Never was more up to date than today. From more sides has been said, we will come out changed from this reality, and you will see that many paradigms will change. I have been very prudent on this front, because the suffering of millions and millions of people can also generate forms of tension, of unhappiness. So the share of those who want to, and also a share of those that want to build back what it used to be before. And so we need to be very honest here. How to convince a political class to these profound changes, to enable these profound changes. This is actually the challenge, a big challenge. Also because the political class nowadays has been shown to be totally inadequate, totally incapable. All the situation of the climate crisis and the fact that we do not manage to come out of this situation. Also, we keep on making choices that are oriented towards green economy, and then we do not really understand that a good share of green economy is shaped by this food system and this intensive food production and the use of chemicals. We really have a huge job ahead of us, all of us, but particularly the youth, particularly the youth movements, that have to draw these boundaries with determination. This won't be easy, but this is the moment in which we need to have answers. We need to have perspectives, and we need to have a different scenario drawn ahead of us, looking towards it. I really think that on this front, there is a huge work to be done. I believe that the conflict is a topic that is very, very important. It can also generate ideas. And what it can bring is also the basis to bring a good change in us. But now I will leave the word to Catalina, my colleague, that has another question for you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Carlo. I'm Catalina Hinojosa. I come from Ecuador, but I live in Italy. I graduated in March and a Master in International Cooperation and Human Rights, and I'm part of the youth of Agriculture and Justice Village of the Economy of Francesco. Since I was a kid, thanks to my parents, I always had this contact with farmers, local indigenous communities, and the equitable. I grew up with a strong understanding of the other and the hard times that farmers and local communities have for the missing of politics, land, access to land. And it was not easy for a young girl like me growing up in the capital city to gain knowledge about farming and building an harmonious relationship with nature. And coming at the end of the high school, I finally understood how agricultural justice was so important. And at that point, I understood what globalization and economic development meant, that in a lot of cases bring about inequities. And at midpoint of my graduation path, I understood I had to change. I really wanted to understand the causes of poverty and the exploitment of natural resources, and seeing that in Ecuador there was a big concentration of the poorest I understood that the concentration of technology brought also the concentration of land exploitation in multinational companies, destroying natural resources and raising more and more the share of poor people in the population. And while I was working and studying, I met a lot of farmers and indigenous communities. I understood really the value of indigenous knowledge and this relationship with nature that was communal and holistic. But unfortunately, working in the work of agribusiness brought a lot of inequalities and migration. And nowadays, the meaning of farmer has a negative connotation. More and more, it means marginality, also economic depression, social depression. And city, on the other hand, became more and more representing, embodying an idea of modernity, of promises, of economic growth. In my master thesis, I really wanted to write about family agriculture, because I understand that in a world that has been, because the work on the land has been understood as old, antique, outdated, but actually it's based on natural ways to use the land. And I saw so many communities, so many ways of using the land, of growing the land, building a relationship with the land. Even the myth of city is crumbling down now. There are so many alternative experiences that brought back a positive way of looking at agriculture and the countryside and the relationship with nature. And thanks to this attention to the environment, the relationships, and a more balanced food production. Nowadays, there are a lot of organizations at different levels, like La Via Campesina, that promotes a network of farmers, and they share and they want food sovereignty, they bring food sovereignty about. And bringing back, okay, during the last experience of COVID-19, a lot of people brought back the values of farmer, but nowadays still being a farmer is not attractive enough. How can we, all of us, go back to the land, go back to reevaluate the food, to increase the value of food? How can we not lose hope in front of this system that brings the mass production of food, the consumption? How can we really bring about a real change, from top to bottom and from bottom up, that brings back this experience of putting hands back to land, taking this relationship with land back to a valuable position? Well, we are witnessing, after this pandemic, to coming back to the land. And this has been studied in Italy, because the number of youth that want to choose this option is increasing. But warning, they want to do it building their life that is sustainable from a human perspective, and then facing not the hardships in which a lot of farmers' communities experienced, violated, raped by a GDO, big organized distribution, where they can find the resources to build management, autonomy, and of their life. They're looking for it with the citizens. And they build this strong connection that is not between producer and consumer, but they go to the citizens to make them co-producer, because the word consumer is a very, very modern term. It's 3 centuries old. It was born with the Industrial Revolution, almost like a disease. Consume. But we actually need to pursue this way of becoming co-producer, building a consciousness that the food that we buy is realized, produced in a certain way, comes from a certain place, and answers to the characteristics of the good, clean, and fair. Good from a nutritional point of view, clean because when producing this food, you didn't destroy the environment, and fair because who made it got their reward, their fair share. These characteristics have to become the orientation, the way for the citizens that become co-producer. And this is a very strong weapon. This is what the youth that come back to land have to understand and understand. When they come back to the land, they become bridges, connections with the citizens, with the people that live in the city, and they build this strong relationship. This is the politics, the big politics, the real one, the one with the capital P, because this mechanism that I simplified but described can be really revolutionary. And it is what will help us reconcile with Mother Earth. And this is the way we will make peace with Mother Earth, only if we will be able to ease, to facilitate this mechanism of youth that go back to the land without wanting to pollute it, but to build their own life project, but at the same time to have a different harmonious relationship with nature and as human beings. This is the thing that we really need to focus on. How do we help youth? We help them if we build this new social pact between city and rural areas, between co-producers and producers. And if we respect also the traditional values, but with the implementation, the use of new technologies. We are trying to rebuild our society with different values and works, and we forgot that these have been the heritage of indigenous communities for ages, and we treated them like they were primitives, people without culture. But now we actually understand they have this ancestral culture that is extraordinary and extremely valuable. And this is how we need to reason. We need to bring back the traditional knowledge and have the strength to use them together though with the modern technologies to build this relationship between city and countryside. If we build this scenario, this situation, then immediately who will be working in that field won't be anymore a subject that works for other economies, but for their own economy and for their brothers and sisters. And they will also be organizers of the territory. You come from a beautiful country that I know very well, the Ecuador. A good deal of this country is integral part of Amazonian region. In the last Synodo, Pan-Amazonian Synodo, I had the pleasure of being invited by Pope Francis to participate to the works, to the meetings, and I was the only agnostic in the middle of bishops. Papa Francesco says I'm a pious agnostic. So I was there listening to these indigenous people, these women that were really at the highest level on a cultural perspective and wisdom, and people were stopping looking at the way they wear clothes, thinking it was folklore, but it's actually culture, the pride that they have of their identity. This hasn't been yet deciphered, translated, because if it were, we were really understanding how poor we are and how rich they are instead. But this spiritual richness, this cultural richness, this identity richness is threatened. by the violence of societies that don't care about this story, about their tale, that don't see that this food production system, the indigenous one, is a revolutionary element. And that's the distinctive element, because we're talking about primary economy. All of us are living beings because we eat, full stop. If there is another theory about it, let me know. But as far as I know, everyone is alive because they eat, and how they eat, and how we respect the other livings and other people, and how we have this relationship and respect them. We understand that we are civilized. And then I understand that the revolution needs to start from these questions. Food is central for our lives. And on this side, the Synod gave extraordinary answers that then were taken again, were repeated by the Pope Francis with a lecture, Querida Amazonia, that describes in a very poetic way this heritage of these lands. Then we have to read again history and understand really how we are inadequate to understand this reality that indigenous communities have. And I understand that, and I think that the work that needs to be done is to conceive coming back to the land solely as a moment that goes back to build back social relationships, an economic fabric, a cultural fabric, a relational fabric that has to become a priority. Then at this point, we need to give new value to the relational good. There is not only profit, that simple profit. There are the relational goods that also economically have a huge value. Maybe you won't find them in a multinational balance sheet, but in the one that we have to do as community, we need to value them.
Thank you, Carlo.
Thank you for it.
There is the importance of technology. We need to use technology for our needs so that the transformation of culture can actually happen through the use of technology. Now I present another young person who wants to ask you a question. I pass the word to Giulia. Hi, everybody. Hi, Carlo. I'm Giulia. I'm a student of economics in Palermo. And I'm the coordinator of Life and Lifestyle Village for the Economy of Francesco. This is a great opportunity to do something big for society. And I'm enjoying being part of this change that we need in our society, which finds itself in many economic crises and also social crises. And we need to refine the identity of the person. And we're arriving at a loss of true values that are the foundation of communities. For many years, the Western world has been living by the myth of abundance, that we need more and more. And we're not worried about quality and where it comes from. In consequence, this has led to a loss of diversity, and local producers have found themselves in crisis. The modern consumer often ignores what is behind production, how it gets to the supermarket. And without inertia, looks at what's in the supermarket and doesn't look at where it's from. And we now see what's missing, that the misinformation of the consumer is something that we need to address. And I want to use your phrase that eating is an act of the consumer. But when we spend our money, we're supporting a particular system of production. And we need to realize that we're playing an important part in this process. We have the power to influence the demand and also the production that's happening in the market. We need to become more conscious consumers. We need to change the lifestyle of consumers that's central also for agriculture, to sustain its production and also for the definition of the production choices of agricultural workers. We need to fight the inequality, the waste of produce, the diversity of production that will give new opportunities to come out of our current crisis. The work that we have to do as consumers is not only cultural, but also formative and productive. We need to make the awareness grow from our past traditions. As you've already said, our society is consumerist, and we've transformed production, agricultural production, into merely a good. We need to give life to a new social conscience, different behavior, and understanding more, and changing our way of being consumers. It's very interesting, the definition that you give of a consumer as a co-producer, as you've said before. My question is, given the importance of awareness of the consumer, and also looking at the difficulties that we're finding in our society today, and especially more so today with the COVID crisis, what is the role of slow food in all of this, in helping the co-production movement to grow? And how can we learn from other countries, for example, in South America? And how is the movement of slow food emerging in other parts of the world? Thank you to you. This gives me the opportunity to put into evidence a very important question. 70% of people living on the planet consume products produced by 500 million small producers. And these producers are families, farmers, small cooperatives, entities that are diffused in all parts of the world, in Italy, also in Africa and other parts of the world. These 500 million small local producers feed 70% of the world's population. Slow food, according to me, and something that we have to do all together, is to defend this reality, which already incarnates biodiversity in itself. All of these local entities, farmers, that are present on the territory, it interprets and shows us what the ground in that area can produce, that culture, that tradition. And we need to defend this small reality of production. And it's very important to maintain this. So how do we defend this? As you've said, justly, it is a political act. The co-producer has to be allied and working together with these small producers and enter into this relational economy that's based on co-production. So this year we've seen striking things, we've seen a new emergence of the farming. In 1996, I inaugurated the farmers market in Chicago. And in the same year in New Orleans. These were small realities. Which was organized with a good distribution of resources. For the first 10, 15 years, they grew and grew gradually. And now we have 12,000 farmers markets in the heart of America. There's 12,000 farmers markets, and they've regenerated agriculture. Who's returned to being a farmer? Those perhaps that have been expulsed from the Silicon Valley. These people going to the market and seeing the seller directly realize their economy. And alongside these have been born support economies which support these farmers and local producers. How does it work? We give money to the farmer, and when the farmer has produced it, they bring their produce to the community. This kind of economy is a lot bigger than what we think. Now the markets in the countryside are thousands and thousands, and they're present in many places, meaning you have contact in first person with your producer. What has happened? This pandemic has made us all go to the supermarket. The only party that has gained in this pandemic are the big supermarkets. And also online businesses. So for example, Amazon is another big winner during this pandemic. These are entities that aren't running models which are just according to us. For example, McDonald's, fast food. Slow food is the contraposition to the kind of businesses we're seeing succeed at the moment. And I'm against Amazon. It's becoming a monster from the point of view of humanity and production, the relations they have with their own employers, their environmental impact, and the power they have, which is going into the hands of the very few. And this kind of company is contributing to the crisis we have. We need to reconstruct the local shops of the villages. And these are not just shops that will be helping and being run by old people, but has to be regenerated by young people, creating a new connection, new connections within communities. And also create more social environment. Our small villages are becoming less and less populated. They're becoming empty. Local shops are becoming empty. There's no longer even local parishes. And they're becoming ghost towns. If we could rebuild these kind of local entities with young people to maintain these local shops, and this would also help generate intergenerational relationships. Italy without small villages is not Italy anymore. These sleeping villages is no longer defining Italy. So on one hand, we have the small distribution. This is not just something for nostalgists, but it's a political act. But we're lacking the political value for small entities. Nowadays, we think that political power is linked only to big entities. And now we think that only with great big companies you can create yourself a life and stability and an income. But we can't all become Amazon workers and Amazon producers. We think the mentality nowadays is to give power to the few. But the main element of biodiversity is small. We need to think that being small is also good. Thank you. I'm now going to try and synthesize everything that's been said. And now I have 2 questions that have come from the web. The first is related to economy of scale and market mass production. And also the point at which eco-sustainability and green economy become important. There's a reasoning at the base of this, that we need to transfer our thoughts towards a generative economy. We also need to rebuild our faith in our producers. And we need to find a new scheme of production which is more rational and logical. One that becomes more local and not less local. It's a big question. I share that what you say, but I'd like to draw attention to this point. We need to start to learn how to read this new reality. When I said there was 12,000 local producers and farmers markets in America, it was not imaginable before. These farmers markets are a sign of true politics, true economy. There's also this kind of economy. I think the moment has come for us to recuperate this vision. Also for shops. Because they are present in the heart of communities and also show social life. But we need a kind of new politics to make this come to life. It's not just a game of the past. It's also a true reality that's present today. And people are becoming more aware of these mechanisms. And this is the importance of solidarity, of affronting the problems that we have, voluntary and together, giving food to those who are most in need. What value does this have? This is a huge value that's helped thousands of young people. We see this in young people who have gone to help take food to people's houses who had to self-isolate, and going into homeless people's shelters to go and help feed. This is also economy. This is something that we have to quantify, a value that we have to quantify. How many tons of food have been distributed by people with their own hands, and they've done it freely? This is also economy, and the one that we have to support and promote. So this would also be something that we have to tell the big managers of the supermarkets, that they should put aside some of their production for this cause. This is the kind of things that we want to be discussing also in all of our webinars, this kind of provocation, this kind of reflection on these issues, also in the future months, and to arrive at Assisi with something more concrete to be able to propose. And this is a good idea that you have suggested to us. I would invite all of the young people listening in this moment to do a little exercise individually. In the next week, find a young person in your local area who is working in the countryside. Get to know them and get to know all the difficulties they face, and get together with them and discuss the conditions for a strong alliance with them, partnership. This is not a useless exercise, but this is politics. This is the true politics and the true economy. We have to do it. Even if you live in the center of Milan, close to Milan, a few kilometers away, there are also entities and realities where young people are working on this and are working in the local economy. And this is how we can experience a true change in our mentality and how we can change the way to do politics. Because this generates the principle of reciprocity, which increases the dimension of how we operate. I ask you to do this. Try and do it. First of all, you'll get to know interesting people. And then you'll also get to know better about the food you're eating. And then you'll see this is the beginning of establishing a new form of distribution. This is beautiful. I think already in our village, there are young people working on this. And we should extend this kind of practice for everyone. Now I leave the word to Daniele. Thank you, Nico. Now, Carlo, I close by thanking you for your sharing of your experiences and your wisdom. And as young people, we hope to be able to interiorize all that you've said and reflect on it. 1 hour has passed. That's how long in quantitative terms, but now we'll think about the quality of what you've said. And personally, I think that you've left a lot of points for us to think about, especially for the young people in the village of agriculture and justice. Thank you very much, Carlo. And I also thank the young people who have worked for this webinar. All of the people who asked questions, but there's many others. The promoters of the event, and people who have been working in the background. And there's many other people who have helped. And also thank you to Luigi Nalbruni and Julia, who you know, who's given us a helping hand. I don't know if you want to say anything else as a final remark. I think something important that I'll take the occasion to say. There's an old proverb in Piemonte. If young people knew the elderly could, there would be perfection. I don't think this proverb is valid today. Now we should say, if the young people could and the old people knew, that would make more sense. So now try and gain back your spaces and be happy. We don't change the world with sadness, but with joy. Thank you, Carlo, and thank you to all the spectators who have followed us this afternoon. And you can follow us on all our social media to find out about the next events. Good evening.